What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you an update to Yubel. So I've been trying to work out some kinks with the deck, trying to out some new strategies, and I took it to this weekend's local, and it did do okay. I ended up drawing the mirror match, I beat Tempai, beat Cyber Dragon, and then lost to Melodious. It basically came down to game 3, bit of a brick fest. Whoever unbricked first was the way to do it, but that was the only time the deck kind of let me down for the entire weekend, which is really kind of cool. There is some spicy additions to the deck, and I'm still playing around with it, still changing around ratios. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the profile, explain what I've got, and trying to explain why I decided to use certain cards, what I felt worked, what didn't work, and then how I would change it up going forward. I'll also show you my demo side deck as well. This was mainly tailored for my local environment, but you'll adapt it to the environment you're going to be taking it to. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you won't miss out on any more upcoming content. So, starting off with your starters, we're playing triple Dark Beckoning Beast and of course triple Samsara D Lotus. Obviously these are the bread and butter of the deck to get everything going. The issue is they are very susceptible to all types of hand traps. You've got the benefit of being able to dodge with certain cards in the form of the Grave Skirmer and of course the Unchanged Soul Savara, which is why I'm highly considering putting the Grave Skirmer up to 3. So I'll show you those now just so you can have the idea of them. So because these two are quick effects, they give you the ability that if your opponent tries to target one of your cards with an imperm, you can quick effect, tag it out and destroy it so that it doesn't get hit with said imperm. But the only one that will really work on is the Dark Beckoning Beast, because Samsara Lotus still needs to be tributed as effect, and it's not a quick effect to tribute in order to get its effect off. So the only time you're really going to protect from an imperm is off the Dark Beckoning, which is why a 2 and a 1 is the ratio that I've been playing around with. Obviously, if you could play more Shavara, maybe you would, but definitely playing these at 1 and 2 at the base minimum is what I've been working with, and it works out pretty nicely. The other benefit of something like Samsara D Lotus, the fact that it doesn't use its effect on board and it tributes as cost, means that they have to imperm you early. And if you're able to like open up a Dark Spirit Gate, or you've already opened up a Dark Beckoning Beast and you can link this off, you then get the ability to bring it back and then do its effect again. Well, not do its effect again, but trigger its effect even though the first one was impermed. So that's something that can be quite helpful for you. Then, of course, we've got Triple Spirit of Yubel, pretty standard on that one. 1 original Yubel and then 1 Terror Incarnate. There was like a couple of times where I wish I had the Unending Nightmare in here, but ultimately it was probably more of a brick than anything else if I did add it in there. And you can see that I've cut Yubel from being 2 down to 1. And the reason I did that is I really wanted to trial out an engine. So for this particular version, the engine that I wanted to trial out was the Dogmatica engine. And there is some reasons for that. So triple Nadir Servant and the 1 Maximus. And the reason I wanted to try this out is that Kyra mentioned to me about Chimera, the King of Phantom Beasts. And what I really liked about this is this gave you a way to kind of bypass the trap card. And as you can see with the format, especially with loads of Tempars running around, there's a lot of board breaking being played. So when they were trying to wipe out your entire board, at least if you had more graveyard recursion in the form of stuff like the Chimera, the King of the Beast, you could banish this, bring out something like your Spirit of Yubel, trigger the Spirit of Yubel's effect, and start to build your board back up again, which really did kind of come in handy. And the way that this also worked was you're also able to produce the Window Lock. So you would send the Apclone would add Schism, you would discard any random card you wanted to, and then you'd be able to banish this and any dark monster to produce a Window, which actually put in a lot of work for the mirror match. So there's times when it works, and that's kind of like the ideal scenario behind it, is I was like, you know what, if Tempai are going to make me go first, the only way that they kind of beat the Window Lock is if they've opened up Droplets, Imperm, or they've opened up Fenrir. And usually what you do is you would wait for them to commit a monster to the board, and then you would use the Schism, so you play it around the Imperm. So then straight away, all you need to worry about is Droplets and Fenrir. But usually if they've played the first card as well, you'd play around the Fenrir. So it kind of gave you the benefit of both. And the idea was, as soon as they activated something like Chandra in the hand, you would summon out the Window, chain the Schism, summon out the Window, and then that's it. They couldn't go any further. So it actually put in a lot of work in those particular matchups, but it's something that I'm like trialing out as to whether or not I feel that it's worthwhile running or not. Then, of course, we've got Triple Kashtira Fenrir. I really wanted to kind of, like, I'm in an iron about taking this out for the Nadir package. Ultimately, I ended up cutting down some other cards in the deck instead. So, like, the second Yubel. I even took out Mature Chronicle. I'm still not sure if that was the right thing to do or not. The way I kind of looked at it was because I wasn't using its effect to revive the Yubel round, and I wasn't really focused on getting 5 counters on it to search that Super Poly. I was going more down the Eternal Favourite route, and more times than not, if I was activating Nightmare Pain, I was choosing to search out the Grey Squirmer than choosing to search out a Mature Chronicle. So I felt being able to have a card like Fenrir that's great for going first and second was a little bit more effective for me. And then the next kind of card I would consider would be main decking Ash Blossom or main decking Nibiru, which, as you'll see in this build, I decided to main deck different hand traps just because of the environment. But again, you'll adapt it to whatever you see fit. Of course, triple Nightmare Throne and the 1 Terraforming, so 4 copies of Nightmare Throne. Like, this is your start of the day. Is absolutely insane. It's such a great card for the deck. The only downside is that it doesn't specifically refer to Yubel as itself. It refers to Yubel as a monster, so it can't be searched off of Spirit. But if it could, it would be incredibly busted and you'd have more ways of getting to it. Really kind of cool card, and then be able to float into a Terra Incarnate is kind of cool as well. The only downside is if you hard open the Terra Incarnate, it sucks. Until you can get Terra Incarnate into the graveyard. Then we've got Triple Nightmare Pain, pretty standard on this one. This is the win con. Like, there are a couple of times when you're like, well, do I cut Nightmare Pain down to 2 or do I cut Spirit down to 2? But as I saw, there was a lot of times when my opponent was, like, the cards that I was used to at the local environment was Imperms and Ogres are really popular right now. So I was having to play around them a lot. And there's a lot of times where they would Ogre, more times than not, the Nightmare Pain. And what that kind of worked with is if I had Spirit Gates already face up, I would use this as the discard follower and then use Spirit Gates to add it back to the hand. And then if you open up multiples of these, even if your first one gets ogred, at least you can still activate the second one, and it still means that your opponent is forced to attack your Yubels, and that just then gives them another thing to worry about. So they then need to pop that before they can start dealing with your Yubels, and then your Yubels are going to float around. I went with 2 Pot of Prosperity. To be totally honest, in a deck like this, which is 43 cards, you probably cut the Pot of Prosperity. But there are times when you just activate this and dig in those 6 can be near invaluable. I think I saw it once this entire weekend, and when I activated it, I didn't really see anything of huge value. But the idea is that it gives you the ability to dig into stuff like Thrones, Beckonings, and Samsaras. You're trying to dig for your starters, and then you're trying to dig for your protectors. 2 Super Poly, I'm still not sure if 2 is the right number. There's matchups where 2 is perfectly enough because you don't want to see it because it doesn't really do anything for you because they just stop you getting to your Yubel. But then more times than not, you're like, I really want to see Super Poly to help me break boards. So I kind of then want to play it at 3. So it is give and take. I think it's incredibly powerful. I'm just going to put it alongside the Eternal Favourite, which kind of acts as a pseudo Monster Reborn for Yubel, or of course a technical pseudo Super Poly as well, which, you know, it kind of give and take. I'm still not set on this ratio. Like I said, the deck is very, very tight because I was playing the Nadir package. I put it up to 43. I didn't want to go much higher than that. If anything, I was trying to get it back down to 40. So I can probably get it back down to 40 just by taking out the Nadir engine, and then that's when I can add in the 3rd Grave Squirmer. But I wanted to try something else out. The idea of the Nadir Servant package was the idea that I was going, okay, normal summon Samsara, tribute off, gets ashed. Now, if I get ashed at that point, I know that they're not going to be able to ash the Nadir, so I'd ash Nadir, and then what I'd be doing is I'd be setting up the window play and hoping that the window play would slow my opponent down enough. Not to mention, if I haven't drawn yet as well, I'd send the Garura can then give me a draw. The exact same can come off of the back of something like your Dark Beckoning Beast, is you'd go normal summon Dark Beckoning Beast, effect to search. If they choose to ash it or not, they probably won't. You activate the gate again, whether they ash it or not, they probably won't. And then you go, if that's all you've got and you normal summon the Dark Beckoning Beast as the addition, you go into Yama, again, they would probably ash you there. So from your 1 card, what you're doing is you're basically tempting your opponent for what particular hand traps they have, and because not a lot of people are expecting a Nadir Servant, even if they do hit them at a certain point, you still have the ability to play further forward, and even if you don't, you activate a Nadir Servant, you go, cool, I'll take that random draw that I might need, and then I'll also start working my way up to send an App Cologne, and also send the Chimera, because the Chimera can let you float back pretty much any of your Fiend monsters as well, which is really important. So I can float back stuff like the Rage as well, which is really helpful, but mainly on more times than not, you're going to want to float back your Yubel or Spirit of Yubel. Still on the one opening the Spirit Gates, I don't know, more people have explained to me why the 2 makes sense, and I understand it. It's like, if you open up a gate and your opponent has, it's very situational. What I mean by that is if you go normal summon Dark Beckoning and they imperm it, ash it, or stop it, you've already opened up the Spirit Gate, you can continue your combo. Cool, I understand that. Also, there's the other one where it's like, okay, well, if you open up the Spirit Gates, you can activate Spirit Gates, get your Dark Beckoning, normal Dark Beckoning, search out a 2nd Spirit Gates, and then you got 3 discard fodder. I get that completely. To me, I really never, like, there are times where I feel 2 just really hinders it. And like I said, this particular bit is so tight on space right now that I've had to cut down and trim wherever I can. If there is another card in here, apart from the tech of obviously trying to use the Nadir Servant package that you would like suggest to cut, then by all means let me know. But like I said, I wanted to try and fit the combo in or fit the tech in, and like I said, it worked out when I saw it, so it's something that I might still consider, but I just need to get the ratios correct. 1 for 1 and then 1 call by, obviously these are your power spells. Then for the hand traps, I went with 2 Ghost Ogres and triple Imperm. These are what I chose to go for just because of the locals. I was expecting there to be a lot of Tempai, and Ogre put in a lot of work, and Ogre put in a lot of work in the Melodious matchup, which is how it kind of got me to game 3, and it ultimately came down to, I just saw Imperm, Ogre, Throne, and they had the Ash for the Throne, and then I saw 2 Lightning Storms and a Shavara, and I was like, cool, this ain't going nowhere. So that wasn't ideal, but again, it's something to chop and change. Like if these don't work for your environment, then you would swap it around. Like I said, the other way that you can put in some hand traps is when you're looking at stuff like Fenris, it's probably your substitute that you'd put in for some of your hand traps that are a bit more reliable. And then it comes down to personal preference. Last two cards, of course, is the Schism and the Abominable Chamber. Obviously, the issue with the Nadir package is it means you have to play the Brick of Schism, but I still feel that this is worth it. And again, like I said, the main reason for this was if I was facing a lot of Tempai, 9.9 times out of 10, they would be making me go first. I was like, right, okay, well, if I resolve the Nadir combo, it's automatic, nearly an automatic game. And then it kind of puts them in a bit of a fret because they go, oh, okay, they might actually play the Nadir combo, so maybe I need to go first. And if they choose to go first, I know their board's going to be a lot weaker, and then I can still fall back on some of the other cards as well that I can utilise. So that's it for the entire main deck. Like I said, 43 card deck. Straight away, if you take out the Nadir package, you cut it down by 5, leaves you 2 spaces, which is your Grey Squirmer, and then a second gate if that is your preference. But really does come down to personal preference on what you'd want to use. So as we're talking about the Nadir package, I'll show you the Nadir targets first. So we've got Chimera, the King of the Phantom Beast. So this is basically for its graveyard effect, that you get to banish this card during your opponent's turn as a quick effect to target a beast, fiend, or illusion monster in your graveyard and special summon it. So it has no restrictions, it doesn't have to come back in attack or defense, and you just get to special summon back a fiend monster. So the whole idea of this particular build is we are going through the Promethean Princess, we're setting up Rage in the graveyard, we're setting up the trap card for Rage in order to do so as well. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to set up so much Grave Recursion that the only time you'll ever lose that Grave Recursion is if you put in D-Shifter or if you're facing a deck that is playing D-Shifter. Because that's a little bit less consistent in the current matchups and meta, then it's not so much of a big issue. Then, of course, you have your App Cologne with your Winder. The idea is that you send the App Cologne. This would then search out Schism. You discard any other card you want to. Then you set the Schism. And a lot of people forget that Schism has a second effect that lets you send a monster of the same attribute of the one you fusion summon. So if they put a Dark on the board, you activate Schism, you lock them into only being able to special summon once, and then you send it from board to grave, which is really cool because it's non-target and it sends. The other targets that can also use as super body targets, of course, is your Garura, which will give you a draw if you haven't used Prosperity. And then another one that you can also use as a send target if you want to, is you've got stuff like your Amber Whale. And the reason that this is kind of cool is that if a link 3 or lower monster on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect while this is in the graveyard, you get to banish it and destroy a card. And then you can also send the Yama. Like there was times where I'd already opened up Shavara and I couldn't justify getting myself into a Yama, that I could actually send it off in the Nadir, and basically again the same thing happens. If any card is destroyed, you banish it from the graveyard to bring back a fiend. So I set myself up. So you can see that we've got 3 cards here that you're naturally going to play anyway, and then you've got 3 cards that are specific for the Nadir combo, and then some that overlap, which is really kind of cool. Super body target of just generic of Yubel, and of course, oh, I also forgot Natis can come off the back of Nadir 7 as well. This is your ghost second popper card. Obviously Yubel and then your Mud Dragon. And then for your negates, I went with the 1 number 65 Gym Buster and the 1 Varadis. Now the idea behind the Gym Buster is there's times where if I feel my opponent has put Nib in, then it might be worth the risk to make a Gym Buster in order to protect. And again, not a lot of people are expecting it because it's something that is in some builds, but not all builds. And you use this by making overlaying 2 Dark Beckoning Beasts. There was a time in the Melodious matchup where I used it, and they ended up having Ghost Mourner and Nibiru. So they tried to Ghost Mourner this, so I detached and negate it. And then I used this as link fodder because I'd already done it. And then I went into a Nibiru. But the fact of the matter is I put them in a position where my next play was going to be making the rank 10s of the Varadis. And then they had to Nibiru. And then I was still able to continue to play because I held back Grave Squirmer and some other cards as well. One thing that was missing here is probably Appaloosa that I might consider putting back in. But again, when you're looking at these cards here, they all serve their purposes. And the only cards I didn't make the entire time, I don't think I didn't use any of these. I sent App Cologne, made Winder, I sent Natis, I made the rank 10 once. I think the only one I didn't make was Mud Dragon. And I don't think I actually made Garura, but I did send it off in the Dear Servant. And then of course you've got your Unchained cards, so we've got the Rage and the Anguish. I kind of messed up with the Anguish because I took a card out. I kind of want to put Abomination back in, but the idea is that you would go, if you're going second and your opponent's got a monster on the board, or like what my opponent did was he Nibiru'd me, and I was able to get into the Anguish, and then I used Anguish to get me into an SP Little Knight. The only issue when you do go down that route to try and play, or in that scenario where I played through Nibiru to do that, I'd already then used up my target for Rage. So, Anguish is probably one of the ones you could flex out for something else if you wanted to. Looking at stuff like Appaloosa, Underworld Goddess, they were other targets I considered. And then obviously the Promethean Princess, which is another way as well. I've only ever found myself in the issue where I'm under my own firelock and I can't get rid of this once. And that makes me consider wanting to play Nightmare Unicorn just because it's a fiend and it's a fire, so it lets me get out of that lock. Especially the lock with the Shavara as well. But keeping in mind, as a note, a lot of people forget this, Shavara only locks you into fiends while it's on the board through its own effect. If you bring it back with Promethean Princess, you're only locked into fires. So that's it for the main and the extra. I'll just quickly show you my demo side deck. So I wanted to trial out more cards now. I didn't know whether some of these were going to be effective at the local environment as much or not. So I went with double Nibiru, double D barrier, and then everything else was like free odds and stuff like Evenlies, skill drains. Skill drains actually won me a match against Tenpai. They went to the battle phase. We got into time. So at the end of the main phase, I flipped the skill drain because they made the level 10 to make sure that I couldn't activate anything in the battle phase. The skill drain bypassed that. They then still continued to the battle phase. And when we was in battle phase, I had Nightmare Pain and I had Spirit. So when they declared with a monster, I summoned down the Spirit and then they were forced to attack the Spirit because of Nightmare Pain. Obviously, they would take the battle damage that I would take, and then Spirit, because it was destroyed and goes to the graveyard, it floated under skill drain into Yubel, and then Yubel floats into Terra Incarnate. Because obviously they can be destroyed by battle because they're under skill drain, but it just allowed you to keep floating, which is really cool. Dusters, Lightning Storms, and Cosmics. Obviously, you can see that I wasn't playing Shifter in this version. I wasn't playing Ash at all. There was a couple of times where Ash came up, but then I was like, the matchups that Ash came up in, like I didn't face any branded, so obviously Ash is a game winner in that one. The only time there was a matchup where I was like, oh, I wish I had Ash in this was in the Melodious matchup, and even then it was mainly for Ostinato, and with that, they have to see it. And it's like, as long as they don't see a second copy of Ostinato, then you'll be okay, because if they open up a second copy of Ostinato, you're just there like, well, that was a waste of use. But like I said, I'm still like trial and tribulation with a lot of this deck. I wanted to try out the Nadir package. Kyron mentioned to me the Illusion package as well, but like a lot of the Illusion builds that I saw online when I was doing the research was literally just an Illusion deck and then 4 Yubel cards, and I was like, that's not what I want to play. I would like to play a Yubel-centered focus build, but with the illusions, and I feel that it doesn't do any better at this exact moment in time than the Unchained cards are doing anyway. Phantom of Yubel is definitely going to change this deck in a massive way, and I can't wait to get that, because then it means you can actually cut down some of these, or like rely less on these, and you can float some of them back a bit more, and you're going to set up your negate, so you'd basically swap out your Gym Buster straight away, and then you could arguably, if you really, really wanted to, swap out the Veratus, but then you'd probably keep this just because it's an Omni negate, whereas this is a Monster negate. So this would definitely come out, and that's your Phantom of Yubel straight in. So there's a lot of things you can change up and change around. So yeah, I'm still twinking and changing around with it. There's not really anything major about it. I thought it did really, really well. Like I said, Tenpai matchup was a very good grind game. The Mirror match again was another grind game. And it was more so just testing out these different techs, especially when there was a couple of, I was expecting a couple of Yubel matchups there already. And I was like, okay, well, how can I make my deck stand out in the mirror? And that's where the Nadir Servant package come in, because even if I window lock my opponent on that one, they really will struggle. So whether or not it's worth the 5 spaces in the main deck, I don't know. It's still something that I want to trial out and see how consistent it is. But I definitely think that if you're going to go to an environment where they're like, yeah, go first, I don't really care, and you window lock them, it's just such a big issue for them to try and deal with. They can really cause them a lot of issues in order to try and break that board. And then they start to become fearful of letting you go first again. And then that's when you can risk and reward it for your other cards that you play as well. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, as absolutely always, stay safe and, of course, happy dueling.